The flight was smooth, gliding gracefully above the clouds. Sunlight shimmered on the wings, reflecting like liquid gold over a sea of white cotton. Passengers sat back, relaxed, lost in their own worlds, some reading, some dozing, others quietly staring out the window, watching the endless sky. The hum of the engines was steady and reassuring, like a heartbeat of peace. No one could have imagined how quickly that calm would shatter. Suddenly, a loud alarm pierced through the cabin. It was sharp, shrill, and terrifying, the kind of sound that cuts through your bones and makes your heart skip a beat. The once gentle atmosphere exploded into confusion. Heads turned, eyes widened, murmurs turned to gasps. Then came the captain's voice, trembling and weak, breaking through the intercom. "This is, your captain, we're experiencing a critical situation." And then, silence, static, no further words. A cold wave of dread swept through the cabin. The flight attendants rushed toward the cockpit, their faces pale. Whispers grew into panic as passengers began asking questions, their voices overlapping in fear. "What's happening? Is something wrong with the engines? Why did the alarm go off?" Moments later, one of the attendants emerged, trembling. Her voice cracked as she tried to calm everyone, but her words only deepened the terror. "Both pilots are unconscious," she said. "We're contacting ground control for help." Those words hit like thunder. Both pilots unconscious. The thought alone seemed impossible. Planes didn't just lose both pilots. Yet here they were, 30,000 feet in the air, flying with no one in control. Panic spread like wildfire. A baby started crying. A man tried to stand but collapsed back into his seat, his hands shaking. A woman whispered prayers, clutching a cross pendant against her chest. The air grew heavy with fear. People looked at each other helplessly, searching for reassurance that wasn't there. Among them sat a young woman near the middle of the plane. She had been quiet the entire flight, lost in her thoughts, staring out the window. Now, her heart pounded so loudly she could hear it in her ears. Her name was Arya. She wasn't a pilot, she wasn't trained for emergencies. But she had something, a memory, buried deep in her mind, of her brother showing her how to fly a simulator when she was younger. It was just a game then. But right now, it was the only thing she had. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself as chaos erupted around her. Passengers shouted, some crying, others frozen in disbelief. One man yelled, "We're all going to die." Another tried to reach the cockpit, but a flight attendant stopped him. The aircraft trembled slightly, a reminder that it was still flying, for now. Arya's hands were shaking, but something inside her shifted. A spark of courage flickered through the fear. She stood up. People turned to look at her as she moved down the aisle, determination slowly replacing the terror in her eyes. "Miss, please stay seated." One of the attendants cried, but Arya shook her head. "I need to see them," she said. "Please." Her voice wasn't loud, but there was strength in it, a quiet kind of authority born from desperation. She reached the cockpit door. The attendants hesitated, then finally opened it for her. What she saw inside made her heart twist. The two pilots were slumped over their seats, oxygen masks dangling uselessly. Warning lights flashed across the control panel, painting the room in a red glow. The air smelled like metal and panic. Arya froze for a moment, her mind spinning. She didn't even know where to start. The controls looked more complex than she remembered from her brother's simulator, buttons and levers everywhere. Her pulse raced, and, for a second, she thought she might faint. But then she heard her brother's voice echo in her memory, calm, steady, guiding her through the basics. "Flying is about control, not fear," he used to say. "If you panic, the plane panics with you." She sat in the captain's seat, her breath shaky but controlled. Her hands hovered over the controls. The headset lay on the dashboard. With trembling fingers, she picked it up and pressed the button. This is Flight 407, she said, her voice cracking. "The pilots are unconscious. I'm a passenger. I need help." Static filled her ears for a second before a voice replied, calm and composed. "Flight 407, this is air traffic control. We hear you. Can you tell us your altitude and heading?" Arya looked around helplessly. I don't know," she said, almost whispering. "I've never flown before." "Okay," the controller said, his tone gentle. "That's all right. Listen to me carefully. You're doing great. We'll guide you through this step by step." Behind her, the attendants watched silently, tears in their eyes. Passengers peeked through the curtain, holding onto one another. The fear was still there, but something else was spreading now, hope. Arya followed every instruction carefully, reading out the numbers and adjusting the controls as told. Each small success gave her a little more confidence. The plane stabilized, the alarms quieted, her breathing slowed, but the pressure was enormous. Every movement mattered. One wrong touch, and hundreds of lives could be lost. Down in the cabin, people prayed quietly. A little girl clutched her teddy bear, whispering, "She's going to save us, right, Mommy?" Her mother nodded through tears. "Yes, sweetheart, she will." Minutes felt like hours. Arya's eyes darted across the instruments, her mind fully locked in. Air traffic control kept talking her through every action, guiding her toward safety. She could see the land appearing through the clouds, tiny patches of green and brown growing larger as they descended. The plane trembled again, the wind tossing it slightly. "Easy," said the controller through her headset. "Keep your nose level. You're doing perfectly." Arya clenched her jaw and focused. Sweat dripped down her forehead, her hands slick against the controls. Every nerve in her body screamed with tension. She could hear passengers gasping behind her, could feel the weight of their lives pressing on her shoulders. At that moment, time seemed to slow. She thought about her brother, her parents, the people sitting behind her, and the fear that had once consumed her. She wasn't a hero. She was just a woman who refused to give up. The landing strip came into view, long, narrow, stretching like a silver ribbon through the earth. Air traffic control's voice was steady in her ear. "You're lined up. Just a few more seconds. Keep her steady." The engines roared as the plane descended. The runway lights flashed beneath the nose. Passengers braced themselves, holding hands, crying, whispering prayers. Arya pulled back slightly on the yoke. The wheels touched down hard. The first impact jolted everyone. The second bounce steadied the aircraft. And then, finally, the plane rolled along the runway, slowing, until it stopped completely. For a long moment, there was silence. No one moved. No one breathed. Then a single voice from the back cried out, "She did it." Applause erupted through the cabin, mixed with sobs of relief. People hugged each other, tears streaming down their faces. The flight attendants clapped their hands over their mouths, crying openly. Arya sat there in the cockpit, her hands still gripping the controls, her body shaking. She couldn't believe it. The radio crackled again. "Flight 407, welcome back to Earth. You did it." She closed her eyes, tears finally falling, and whispered, "Thank you." Outside, emergency vehicles surrounded the plane, flashing lights reflecting off the metal fuselage. Paramedics rushed in to assist the unconscious pilots, but the focus of every camera, every onlooker, was on Arya, the passenger who had done the impossible. When she finally stepped out of the aircraft, the cool air hit her face. Reporters shouted questions. Passengers hugged her, thanking her through tears. One woman said, "You saved my children." Another whispered, "You saved us all." Arya didn't know what to say. She just looked up at the sky, the same sky that had almost taken them, now calm and beautiful again, and took a deep breath. In that moment, she wasn't just a passenger anymore. She was a symbol of courage, proof that even in the darkest hour, one person's bravery can change everything. From passenger to hero, she had done what no one thought possible. She had landed the plane when everyone thought it was over. She stood up, her knees weak but her spirit burning with something she couldn't name. Around her, panic and confusion swirled like a storm, voices overlapping, hands reaching to stop her. The flight attendants tried to hold her back, their eyes filled with fear and duty. "Please, ma'am, sit down. It's not safe," one of them cried, her trembling hand outstretched. But Arya couldn't listen. Somewhere deep inside, something stronger than fear had already taken hold, a quiet, unstoppable determination that told her she had to move, had to act, had to do something before it was too late. Each step toward the cockpit felt heavier than the last, the aisle stretching endlessly as the plane rocked gently in the turbulence. The world seemed to narrow until there was nothing left but the sound of her heartbeat and the blaring alarms still echoing faintly through the cabin. She reached the cockpit door. Her fingers hesitated only for a second before she knocked, her voice barely audible, "Captain. Are you okay?" No answer, only silence. The flight attendants exchanged terrified glances, then one of them reluctantly swiped a keycard and pushed the door open. What waited inside stole the air from Arya's lungs. Both pilots sat motionless, their bodies slumped forward, oxygen masks hanging uselessly from their faces. The control panel glowed in angry shades of red and amber, warning lights blinking like tiny bursts of panic. The smell of electronics, ozone, and something faintly metallic filled the narrow space. Her first instinct was disbelief. This couldn't be real. Things like this happened in movies, not real life. But the motionless figures in front of her didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't respond. One of the attendants stepped inside, shaking the captain's shoulder. "Captain, Captain, can you hear me?" Still nothing. The second pilot was pale, sweat beading on his forehead, lips slightly parted as if frozen mid-sentence. Arya's pulse thundered in her ears. She could feel her body trembling, every cell screaming at her to run, but something inside her refused to back away. Her eyes darted to the glowing instruments, the endless array of switches and gauges. She didn't know what most of them meant, but some looked familiar: altitude, heading, throttle. Fragments of memory flickered like sparks in the dark. Her brother's voice, his laughter, the nights they'd spent on his old flight simulator, pretending to soar through skies like this one. He used to sit beside her, calm and patient, saying, "If you ever get scared, Arya, just remember, every plane wants to fly. You just have to guide it." She had laughed then, thinking it was just a game. Now that single sentence echoed in her mind with terrifying clarity. The attendants were panicking. One of them grabbed the intercom, calling for medical help. Another was crying quietly in the corner. The plane jolted suddenly, making the oxygen masks swing like pendulums. Arya steadied herself against the doorframe. Through the windshield, clouds blurred past, thick and white, with the faint golden shimmer of sunlight beyond. It was beautiful and terrifying all at once. She turned to the nearest attendant. "What altitude are we at?" she asked. The woman blinked, confused by the question. I don't know. The pilots never said. We can't contact them anymore." "Then we have to contact someone who can," Arya said, forcing the words out even though her throat was dry. She slid into the captain's seat, feeling the weight of the moment press down on her shoulders. The seat was warm from the pilot's body, the leather creaking as she leaned forward. Her fingers hovered above the control yoke. It was heavier than she imagined, solid and unyielding. The radio headset hung beside the control panel. She hesitated for a heartbeat, staring at it like it was an ancient relic. Then she grabbed it, placed it over her head, and pressed the transmit button. Her voice shook as she spoke. This is Flight 407. Both pilots are unconscious. Can anyone hear me?" For a terrifying few seconds, there was only static. The silence stretched so long she thought no one would answer. Then a calm male voice broke through. "Flight 407, this is air traffic control. We read you. Please identify yourself." I'm a passenger," she said, her words trembling. "The pilots, they're both down. I don't know what happened. I'm not a pilot. I need help." "Copy that, Flight 407, the controller said, his tone suddenly focused, professional, the kind of voice made to guide people through impossible moments. "Listen carefully. You're doing fine. We'll guide you step by step. First, look for the autopilot switch. Can you see a button labeled AP or Auto Flight?" Arya scanned the panel, eyes darting from one glowing light to another. Yes, I see it." "Good. Is the light on?" She hesitated. "No, it's off." "Okay, that means you're flying manually. Don't touch the controls too much right now. Keep them steady. We're reading your flight path. You're stable for now." She exhaled shakily. Just hearing his calm voice gave her a small thread of hope to hold onto. Behind her, the attendant stood frozen, watching this young woman they barely knew take the place of two trained pilots. In the cabin, passengers whispered to each other, news spreading row by row that a civilian was in control. Fear mixed with awe. Someone whispered a prayer aloud. Another just stared forward, lips trembling. Arya adjusted her grip on the yoke. It felt unreal, the thought that her hands now held the fate of every soul on board. She glanced at the pilots again, still unmoving. "Please, wake up," she whispered, her voice barely audible. But deep down, she knew they wouldn't. "Not yet." The controller's voice returned, calm and steady. "We're rerouting nearby traffic and preparing an emergency landing site for you. We're going to make it through this together, okay?" Arya nodded instinctively, even though he couldn't see her. "Okay." For the first time since the alarm, she felt something shift inside her, not courage exactly, but focus. Fear was still there, sitting heavy in her chest, but she pushed it aside. Every breath, every heartbeat mattered now. The world outside stretched endlessly, blue sky blending with white clouds and sunlight. The engines hummed, powerful and alive, waiting for direction. Arya's reflection flickered in the glass, pale, frightened, but determined. She whispered to herself, "You can do this. Just guide it. And with that, the impossible task began. She grabbed the radio with trembling hands, her breath coming fast and uneven. The headset crackled in her ears, filled with static and the distant hum of other frequencies. Her heart pounded as she pressed the button, voice barely holding together. "This is Flight 407, she said, her tone breaking with fear. "Both pilots are unconscious. I need help. Please, someone, respond." For one horrifying moment, there was nothing. The silence of the sky pressed down on her like a weight. Then a calm, grounded voice broke through the static, smooth, professional, and steady. "Flight 407, this is air traffic control. We copy you loud and clear. Can you confirm your situation?" Arya's eyes flicked over the motionless pilots beside her, then to the sea of glowing instruments. "They're both unresponsive. I'm just a passenger. I don't know how to fly this plane." "Okay, that's all right," the voice said, steady and reassuring. "You're not alone up there. We're going to guide you step by step. Can you tell me your current altitude?" Arya scanned the cockpit frantically, searching for something familiar. The altimeter, she remembered her brother explaining it once, pointing to a circular gauge. 30,000 feet, she whispered. "Good job," the controller said. "You're doing great. First thing we need to do is keep the aircraft stable. Do you see the control yoke in front of you?" "Yes," she said, gripping it tightly. Her knuckles were white. "All right, gently, very gently, pull back if the nose drops, and push forward if it rises. Small movements only. You've got this." She did exactly as told, feeling the resistance of the aircraft through her hands. The massive jet obeyed, shifting slightly but holding steady. The controller's calm tone became her anchor. Every word felt like a lifeline pulling her closer to survival. Behind her, the flight attendant stood frozen at the doorway, eyes wide, watching this young woman hold the fate of hundreds in her hands. In the cabin beyond, fear had turned into an eerie kind of silence. Passengers sat gripping their seats, eyes closed, lips moving in prayer. Children clung to parents, strangers held each other's hands. The air was thick with hope and helplessness. Sweat trickled down Arya's face, blurring her vision. Her heart felt like it might explode, but she couldn't stop now. "What do I do next?" she asked. "You're doing just fine," said the controller. "Now, we need to slow your descent rate a bit. Look for a lever near your right hand, it should be labeled, throttle. Can you see it?" She scanned the controls, her eyes darting left and right. "Yes, I think I see it." "Good. Very slowly, pull it back just a little, not too much. We don't want to lose speed." Her fingers trembled as she did it. The engine's roar softened slightly. The plane felt heavier, calmer. The voice in her ear spoke again. "Perfect. You're flying the plane now, Arya. You're in control." Those words hit her like a wave. Her chest tightened, not from fear this time, but from realization. She was truly flying this aircraft. She was holding everyone's lives in her hands, and somehow, she was doing it. Tears filled her eyes, but she blinked them away. "I don't want to let them down," she whispered. "You won't," came the answer, gentle but firm. "Just stay with me." Minutes passed like hours. The radio continued to buzz with voices, controllers coordinating with nearby airports, emergency teams being alerted, other pilots offering assistance. But to Arya, it was all just noise in the background. The only voice that mattered was the one guiding her, step by step, through the impossible. Outside, the sky was a surreal canvas, orange sunlight bleeding through gray clouds. The horizon stretched endlessly, a mixture of beauty and terror. She could see the curve of the earth, the distant shimmer of land far below. It was breathtaking, but she couldn't afford to admire it. A sudden jolt rocked the aircraft, and she gasped. "What was that?" "Just a bit of turbulence," said the controller quickly. "Keep the wings level. You're doing fine." She gritted her teeth and held the yoke steady. Her arms burned from tension, her palms slick with sweat. The cockpit was hot, the air thick. Her breath came in shallow bursts, but her focus didn't waver. Down in the cabin, someone started sobbing softly. Another voice tried to comfort them. The sound reached Arya through the open cockpit door, a reminder of the lives depending on her. She whispered to herself, "Don't give up. Not now." The controller's voice came again. "We're going to start preparing you for descent soon. Do you see a screen that says, Nav, or, Flight Path?" "I see it," she said, squinting at the glowing display. "Good. We're going to align you with the nearest runway. Just follow my directions carefully. Every movement you make it slow, smooth, and steady. She followed his instructions, turning the aircraft gently, adjusting the heading, feeling the weight of the jet respond beneath her. The clouds parted slightly, revealing a patchwork of land below, rivers, fields, tiny clusters of lights. Civilization, safety. A faint smile touched her lips. For the first time since the nightmare began, she felt a flicker of hope. But hope was fragile. The aircraft dipped suddenly, a warning light flashing across the panel. Altitude, she cried. The voice in her headset sharpened but remained calm. Easy, Arya, pull back slightly. Not too much, that's it. Perfect, you're all right. The plane leveled again. She exhaled shakily, her heart pounding. I thought we were going down. You corrected beautifully, the controller said. You've got good instincts. She almost laughed through her tears. I don't even know what I'm doing. That's not true, he replied softly. You're doing exactly what you need to. You're keeping everyone alive. Those words sank into her heart. Behind her, passengers began whispering again, voices trembling but filled with cautious faith. One man said, she's really doing it. Another answered, God bless her. Arya tightened her grip on the controls. The sweat on her palms made the yoke slippery, but she refused to let go. Every second she stayed focused meant another second closer to survival. The hum of the engines was constant, a reminder that the world hadn't ended yet. Somewhere below, on the ground, hundreds of people were preparing, runways clearing, ambulances waiting, controllers watching the radar with silent prayers of their own. And up in the sky, a single passenger-turned pilot refused to give in to fear. As the plane approached the runway, the sky outside had turned from gold to gray, the clouds closing in like curtains before the final act. The distant line of the runway lights shone faintly through the mist, a glowing path carved into the earth, guiding her home. Arya's hands shook uncontrollably, sweat dripping down her fingers as she gripped the yoke. The voice in her headset was calm but urgent. You're lined up perfectly, Flight 407. Keep the nose steady. Ease her down. She could hear her own breath, short and uneven. Every heartbeat echoed in her ears like the ticking of a clock running out of time. Behind her, the passengers were silent, their fear replaced by something deeper, complete surrender. They had given their lives into her hands, and all they could do now was hope. 500 feet, came the voice. Keep it level. Don't fight the wind. Let her glide. The city lights below glimmered through the fog. She could see flashes of emergency vehicles waiting along the runway. Red, blue, white, a rainbow of urgency. Her stomach twisted. Her eyes burned with exhaustion, but she refused to blink. The plane dipped slightly, and her heart seized. You're low, the controller said gently. Add a little power. Her trembling hand reached for the throttle. She pushed forward just enough, feeling the engines roar louder, lifting the aircraft slightly. Good, the voice said. Perfect correction. You're right on the line. The ground rushed up toward her, impossibly fast now. The runway lights seemed to stretch endlessly, like a promise she had to reach. She whispered to herself, just a little more. Come on, Arya, you can do this. 200 feet. The engines, hum turned into a deep growl. The whole plane vibrated, shuddering as air buffeted against the wings. Her arms ached from the strain, but she didn't dare let go. Her knuckles were white, her body tense as steel. She could feel the lives of everyone behind her pressing against her spine. 50 feet, the voice said, now barely above a whisper. Pull back gently, just a little, let her touch. Arya pulled back on the yoke. The nose lifted slightly, the runway filled the windows. Her heartbeat thundered louder than the engines. The first impact came hard, a loud, violent thud that jolted her body against the harness. Gasps and cries erupted from the cabin. The plane bounced once, hard enough that for a split second she thought it might lift off again. Hold it steady, the controller called. She did. The second bounce was softer, the tires screeching as they met the ground again. Smoke rose briefly from the friction, a thin veil that blurred the flashing lights outside. She held her breath, waiting for the worst, but it didn't come. The wheels caught the runway fully now, rolling, slowing, dragging the giant machine down the strip of asphalt. The sound of rubber against pavement became a roar, then a hum, then a whisper. The plane slowed more, until finally, it stopped. Silence. The world seemed to freeze. For a moment, Arya couldn't move. Her hands were still locked on the yoke, her chest rising and falling in ragged breaths. Her ears rang with the echo of the landing, the vibration still trembling through her bones. She didn't believe it at first. Was it really over? Then, somewhere behind her, a voice cried out, a single word, half a sob, half a shout. "We're safe." The cabin erupted. Applause thundered through the air like a wave crashing against the shore. People were crying, laughing, hugging strangers. A flight attendant dropped to her knees, sobbing with relief. A child clapped his hands, shouting, "She did it. She landed it." Arya stared through the cockpit window, tears blurring her vision. The runway lights glowed like stars on the ground, and for the first time, she allowed herself to breathe. The radio crackled again, the controller's voice filled with emotion now. "Flight 407, you are safely on the ground. Outstanding work, Arya, you did it." She pressed the transmit button, her voice barely a whisper. "Thank you, I just did what I had to do." Outside, rescue vehicles raced toward the aircraft, lights flashing through the mist. Fire trucks, ambulances, airport crews, all converging around the plane that had defied disaster. The smell of burned rubber and hot metal seeped into the cockpit. Arya slowly removed the headset, her fingers trembling. She looked at the pilots, still unconscious, but alive. Then she turned to the doorway, where two attendants stood watching her, eyes wide and wet with tears. One of them whispered, "You saved us." Arya tried to smile, but her lips quivered. "We saved each other," she said softly. She unbuckled her seatbelt and stood, her legs weak. The moment she stepped out of the cockpit, the passengers erupted into applause again, louder this time, filling the entire cabin with sound. It was the sound of gratitude, disbelief, and pure human joy. Strangers reached out to touch her arm as she passed, murmuring thanks through their tears. One elderly man clasped her hands and said, "You gave us back our lives." She didn't know how to respond. Words felt too small, so she just nodded, tears spilling freely now. Outside, through the cabin windows, dawn was breaking, soft pink and gold light spreading across the horizon. It felt like the sky itself was celebrating.